There is no evidence for that. That was the emphatic statement of certainty spoken by my lab partner who was sitting to the right of me. He made this comment in light of the conversation that I was having with my female lab partner who was sitting across from me. It was the spring semester of my freshman year at Phoenix Community College, and we were having a conversation while completing a lab assignment for marine biology. The female lab partner across from me, she was a Christian, and she was talking about how she was having some doubts and some struggles in regards to her Christian faith. And so I was providing her some evidence, some proof of God's existence when my other lab partner interrupted and made his emphatic statement of certainty. He clarified that he was actually an agnostic, which I kind of thought was a little ironic that he would be so certain about a position of uncertainty. If you're not sure what agnosticism is, it's the belief that there is no evidence for or against God's existence. However, his emphatic statement of certainty reminded me of a similar statement made 2,000 years ago. It was made by a man who, in light of the conversation he was having with his friends, who shared with them that they had seen the resurrected Jesus, made his own emphatic statement of certainty. And I want to invite you to read with me that statement together. We read together, "Unless I see in his hands the mark of the nails, and place my finger into the mark of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe." The name of that man who made that statement was Thomas. He was one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. And for some reason, Thomas was not there when Jesus made his first resurrection appearance. And so his friends were telling about how they saw Jesus appear to them, and yet he refused to believe. Essentially, Thomas said, "I'll believe it when I see it." Now, maybe you resonate with Thomas. Some of you might be like Thomas. "I'll believe it when I see it." Maybe some of you are like that agnostic lab partner that I had. Not sure if there really is any evidence one way or the other. Or maybe you find yourself today like that female lab partner where you're a Christian, but maybe you have some doubts and some struggles in your life. Wherever you find yourself at, in whatever place, I have a question for you. And my question is, what evidence do you desire to give you proof that God really exists? Do you want to see a personal message from God written to you in the clouds? Would you love to hear an audible voice from the heavens speak to you? Would you love to see a shaft of light from the sky followed by an angelic choir? Or is there some other evidence that you desire for proof for God's existence? I'm here to tell you today that whatever evidence that you want, the evidence that actually you need, is the same evidence that Thomas demanded to see the crucified and resurrected Jesus. Now, why am I making such an emphatic statement of certainty? Well, for starters, look at the crucifixion of Jesus. The wounds that Jesus has in his hands are evidence of the debt that he paid for you. You see, you and I contribute in seemingly small and big ways to all the problems and evils in the world. It's what the Bible calls sin. We participate in sin because we are sinful. And God demands debt to be paid for that sin, and that debt is death. Yet the beautiful thing about the gospel message is that God pays that debt for us. He takes on that sin, and he dies our death, and those crucifixion marks in his body are therefore evidence that the debt has been paid. Yet we also need the resurrection, because the resurrection is also evidence that the debt has been paid. Because if there is no victory over death, there is no victory for you and for me. You know, Thomas actually got his wish. And we're told that 8 days later, while he was hanging out with the other disciples, Jesus appears again. And John records for us the dialogue that goes on between Jesus and Thomas. And I want to bring that up on the screen. And I'll read this for you. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you've seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." I said earlier that the evidence that you need for God's existence is the crucified and resurrected Jesus. And I want to point out to you Thomas's reply to when he saw Jesus appear. He said, "My Lord and my God." Jesus doesn't correct him. Because to look upon the crucified and resurrected Jesus is to look upon the crucified and resurrected God in human flesh for you and for me. While you and I, at this time in our life, don't get the chance to actually see and touch the crucified and resurrected Jesus, I want to point out something to you in the text. Jesus talks personally to us when he says, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." Jesus isn't calling us to blind belief. Jesus is calling us, just like he was calling Thomas to do, was to believe upon the eyewitness testimony of those disciples. You know, the evidence of the crucifixion and resurrected Jesus is so much infinitely better in regards to evidence of God's existence. It's better than seeing a personal message written in the clouds. It's better than hearing an audible voice from the heavens. It's better than seeing that shaft of light accompanied by an angelic choir. It's better than anything that you think you may want, because it talks about a personal God who's personally concerned about your sin, who has provided the solution for you. In going back to that conversation that I had so many years ago with my agnostic marine bio partner, he wound up saying that he thought that when he was old and gray that he would have it all figured out. meaning that he would have it all figured out, the question about God's existence, of whether he existed or not. And then he got up and he went off and did something else. And a thought had struck me at that moment, and I turned to my other lab partner sitting across from me, and I said to her, but what if he doesn't live that long? What if he doesn't make it to a point in time that he'll have it all figured out? And so my encouragement for you today is for you not to wait until you're potentially old and gray to have the God question figured out for you. Rather, invite you to look into the scriptures. Look upon the eyewitness accounts written for you. And in the words of Jesus, do not disbelieve, but believe. Amen.